Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for a fourth session out of the series where we talked once why it is time to redefine your business strategy. And then we talked about it is important to understand the current employee mindset due to COVID. Third step was how to embed the strategy. And then this is the most important point because everybody talk about strategy. Every company revise their strategy, but uh, how to embed within their employees, I think that is something where is always challenge. So today I'm very excited to have my friend on board with me, Mark Carter from Sydney. I think you can feel the dark behind him. So it's 9 p.m. Thank you so much, Mark, on board. Kindly quickly introduce yourself for the audience.
Hey, Ali, it's great to collaborate with you as always. So I'm a veteran learning and development professional now for a quarter century on global projects. We've worked together and collaborated on many pieces as well. So yeah, I'm excited to join you. Thanks for inviting me. Nighttime or not.
Yeah, so it's like it's a midday for us. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's like just assume that the senior leaders have the strategy in their hands now. They find out all the reasons that it is important to embed the strategy. Now it is a time that you're having a consolidation session. You're having an event where all of your team members are together with you. So, what happened exactly? Now, even this session, like it's 3 o'clock, it's the office time, you're in the middle of something and you have joined this LinkedIn Live. Now, just visualize as Mark is speaking, I'm speaking. I tell you what is going on in your mind. You're thinking, oh, I left that meeting. Oh, I was supposed to send that email. Are these guys really understand my challenge? Are they understand my concerns? Will they be able to resolve my problems? So these are the questions coming into your mind because the moment will start something funny, something interesting, which is not interesting for you at all, you will be disconnected. That is the game. The reason is you have three parts of the mind: instinctive mind, which is 95% of your brain, which is always focused on your own success. On your own success. Doesn't matter where companies is growing, company is succeeding, that is not important to you. You feeling like how important I am for the company. So that is step number one for any kind of session, any kind of event. Now what happened, Mark? Most of the summits, like people are sitting down, like before the event, 9 o'clock, 8:30 in the morning, people are just talking, you're right, gossiping of everything and having cup of tea, and suddenly 9 o'clock the session started and the place start looking like a graveyard because, oh, on the corner one person is speaking about the numbers, one person is speaking about the successes of the company. Suddenly the same group of people who were very excited, they were talking, they were laughing, suddenly they start feeling boring. Have you got similar idea where the opening of any event, it is not focused on the success of audience, not focused on understanding what they want to achieve today? What is your take on this, Mike?
Yeah, so to start with, the way you're describing it, if you're going to open an event and you want that opening powerful keynote or session to draw everybody in, the quality of that really needs to be there. And there's a couple of themes that spring to mind to make sure the strategy comes across. Relevance is the first word I'll say here. Is the content that is being delivered relevant, but can that be positioned in a way it's relevant for all that are paying attention, all that are attending? And that's why it's super important. So whenever I go and do keynotes for conferences, a lot of them, often I'm an external to their business. I make sure I'm taking a really thorough brief. I'm really taking on board what's the purpose of this session? What's the purpose of this conversation? What's the pains experienced by the audience attendance? And often that's people from many different departments and divisions, because then I'm looking for ways to make sure that the content can be positioned for relevance, so they do pay attention, so they don't zone out, the points that you made earlier, so they stay fully engaged with what's going on. So make sure, even before you start to do the delivery, have you done your prep to make sure the relevance of that content, that opening session, is relevant for everybody that's in the audience? Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So the relevance is something, and I would request that we should go further deeper, like to make sense for the people. Like we need to think of in the first keynote, we need to focus to resolve their problem, or
Correct.
at least we need to acknowledge their problem, because a lot of times people do not need solution. They just want to make sure that we understand their issues, understand their motivation. So relevance, I would suggest to go one step deeper, because I will give you an example. So in whenever we do, like we did persuade summit, we did work reimagine, digital acceleration. So in every summit, we never start with the keynote. We start with an activity where
Yeah.
we give time to everybody. What do you want to achieve today?
Yeah.
What do you want to achieve today? So they feel like, okay, it's about us. They write it down, they present it, and that we display on a slide or a journey, so that they feel like throughout the day, and whenever our host, our panelists, our storytellers, they talk about it, we keep referring the same place. Okay, guys, please note that these were the expectations from the audience. So audience feel great, even though we know that in one day time the problems will not be resolved, but they want to get acknowledged. So this is, I would suggest, can you consider that, going deeper into that?
100%. So let me give that some context, because let's say in the scenario you're describing there, if you're presenting content to a mixed audience of people attending, and that's the first chance you get, you don't know who you've got in the room. Or
Yeah,
as we've done at conferences, what do you want to get out of today? And then we
yeah,
can tie that relevance back in. Internally, though, in a business, let's say you're now doing the same event and it's internally within a business. I'm working on the presupposition that
mm-hmm,
there's data already captured from employee
yeah,
experience, from
mm-hmm,
employee insights, that's
mm-hmm.
helped actually package content that is about to be delivered. And in that
Yep,
scenario, you've got those insights. So let's say we're working on the presupposition now that the content has been adapted,
yep,
bespoke, and made relevant, because you've drawn that data in. You've had the employee inputs, you've had your team inputs, you've got those insights, and they've been considered to make sure you package a relevant content and keynote. Even for a mixed audience to some degree, I mean, this is often what I end up doing. It's still that quality of a brief. So before I go and do
mm-hmm,
it, there's people that might have their talk for that year. And even though
mm-hmm,
you say skeletally sound structured talk, for me, I always ask the event organizers, what's the outcomes? What's the pains?
yeah,
What's the problems, as you know? So then I'm still already looking for ways to tie the relevance of
mm-hmm,
the picture message to those generally accepted outcomes and pains that are sought. Now, obviously, as well, within a mixed audience, it's a great place as well. If you've got time, you can, what are they looking to get out of the day? Great, go for it. But my experience would also be, in a mixed audience, you don't have time with 3, 4, 800 people in a room to try
mm-hmm.
800 insights. That would have been done as pre-work before you even
Yep.
get up to the delivery.
Right. So again, that's another very good idea. Like you get the survey beforehand, and when you come into the event, you just display it like a word cloud kind of thing. So we got survey from 800 people. So these are the general pain points where everybody preferred to talk about. So you just put a journey slide, yeah, journey SMD there, and that will help people to understand throughout the day. So the first
Completely.
takeaway. So I would like to move to the next step. So, ladies
Can,
and
can, I
gentlemen,
add, can I add one thing, Ali? Sorry for that as well, because let's say as well you've got an event. The opening session is one of normally many sessions, and this is why it's super important as well. And you know this with your events, that whoever's hosting, whoever's working that day, an important part of their role is to stitch together all the independent presentations so there is a
yeah,
common thread. Otherwise,
yep,
they can hang as singular sessions. And that's why, I think when you've got the right MC, the right host, the skill of stitching an event together becomes super important, because that keeps building on the relevance, and you keep reminding the content back in to the
yes,
output that people were looking for. So
yep.
stitching the event together as well, super important.
Great. So the first takeaway for the conversation we just had, everybody is attending the event for their own success. So the moment we start the event, make sure to understand that we understand audience challenges, excitement, pains, and acknowledge them. And I would suggest that every event where you have the audience from your company or the general summit, have one SMD absolutely separate, where you put word cloud or a survey result or anything related to audience, so that audience believe that during the whole day or the 2 days program, panelist stories, they keep referring to resolve their problem. So that's the first one. Now the second point, very important. I'll share an interesting story with you, Mark. Once a company talked to me. They said like, we had like outstanding results achieved, and our director of one of the function, he started talking, and then uh, he was sharing that, okay, we have achieved 23% of the growth. And what happened, Ali? People were not clapping at all, even though they achieved the results. They achieved the results, but they were not excited. We were like very worried what exactly happened. Now imagine, they achieved 23% growth. They were planning to celebrate, but it was employees who didn't want to celebrate. Now that's very interesting scenario. So we did investigation. We had the surveys with the people, and we got to know that what happened. Every month they have like monthly review meeting, and in that monthly review meeting they put the graphs. Okay, so this was our yearly target. We achieved this. We achieved this. We achieved. So that was continuously a routine kind of thing. Once they achieved the year targets, the CEO came, the director came, and he actually opened the same slide, and he started like, so we were here in the beginning, then we achieved this and we achieved this. And people got disengaged because the moment they see that slide, they predict it like, oh, the same slide, the same data. And then, secondly, they found out like it's about company, it's not about us who achieved it. And then we got to know, and we did the research on that. So I would refer like John Medina. He's a biological molecular scientist. He said that our mind always predicts. So if, for example, imagine there's a nice movie of James Bond movie. We keep waiting for the movie, but like nowadays, no time to die movies like going on. So once we watch that movie, how many times we watch it again and again? No, unless we are into the love that movie. The reason is, once our mind can predict the result, we actually ignore that. So the scientific conclusion is, mind always predict and ignore boring stuff. So whenever we start our session or event, we start with the slide. Finance director starts and actually graphs same period last year. This is a like comparison. The moment people see that, they start sleeping. So that is the point. Mind predicts boring stuff. So in the starting point, we need to focus on something which is very surprising. Mark, what is your take on that?
I've got a couple of things that spring to mind for this one. So the first is the science there you're saying is that human beings, we experience our world as pictures in our mind.
Okay.
You don't have a memory that's a pair of hands on a typewriter typing facts. As I'm talking now, your brain hasn't got a pair of hands typing the words and storing in files. You're experiencing your world through pictures. If I say to you, don't think of an elephant, you're probably going to think of an elephant. If I say, don't think of a purple elephant, you're probably going to see either a purple elephant or you might see a lion. But the point is, you're not seeing the words, don't think of an elephant. So we're experiencing our world in pictures in the mind. And this is important because to your point about graphs, some people love those graphs. People that are detail-oriented and factual will love them. But as a general rule of thumb, graphs are numbers. And a good way to think about graphs and numbers is no different than with your kids. They are dot drawings. Do you know the drawings that when you get the dot to dot, the dots are numbered? Now, as an adult, you might be able to look at those dots and you can predict what the picture's going to be. You know it's going to be a rabbit chewing a carrot. But the child may not actually be able to predict that that's the picture. They've got to join the dots. And the point here then is when you're sharing graphs, you've got to remember they're the dot to dots. You've got to build a story. You've got to explain the story. You've got to paint the picture of the story. What is that elephant? What is that rabbit? It's your explanations of those graphs that keeps people engaged, draws them in, and makes it, to your point, perhaps less boring. So,
very correct. Very correct. Yep.
Dot to dot, bring them to life through stories. Make sure you're describing them a way that I can see a strong picture in the mind, because that's how the brain works.
Very right. So So the second takeaway, ladies and gentlemen, is basically when you're designing an event, when you're planning a strategy embedding session, make sure that whatever is you're doing in routine, in during the town hall and during your sales conference, do not bring the stuff which you are already doing it. You need to surprise it. You need to create an immersive experience because that's something more memorable. That's the case. So and moving on to the next step, that's I mean, I'm talking now about inclusivity. 2 3 days back, like there was a climate change summit going on, and Joe Biden and then Secretary General UN, he was there. So the Secretary General said that what we're doing absolutely wrong. Yeah. And we are actually digging our own graves the way we are actually manipulating with the earth, so we're not doing good. So this is something important. He said, like many years later we will regret and will be very disappointed once we'll face to the next generations. No, this is going on, and this is very serious stuff. And once the camera was on Joe Biden, he was sleeping. Yeah. He was
Sleep.
sleeping. So I mean, nothing personal, nothing personal. We're just like taking it as a learning. Yeah. So the point, ladies and gentlemen, I want to put here, and with the help of Mark, inclusivity. Inclusivity is something most important for the audience. Audience don't care. It's like 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. Once they're in the gathering, they want to be included. They want to be engaged. And if it's a broadcast, if it's one way, they will just not bring any part. So Joe Biden, like, it's not his fault. It's actually nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. What happened? Once it's a one way, because we have certain attention spans. So once it's a one way for a longer period of time, we feel sleepy. Even one of my friend from one of the bank talked to me a couple of weeks back. So he said that, Ali, I was in a bank session which was very important to me, and the person as a keynote, he talked for 40 minutes. And you know what? Yeah. So after 6 to 7 minutes, I was sleeping.
Mhm.
So inclusivity, engagement is the key. We need to make sure that audience is part of your dialogue. Audience is part of your journey. You don't drive alone. You have to bring the people along. So inclusivity, engagement is the key. Mark, what is your take on that?
Yeah, there's a couple. So I was going to say, first of all, Sleepy Joe, isn't that his nickname anyway? Sleepy Joe, right? So he's living up to his nickname. This is why. So I've got a program in my academy that's called Orator, because orator is a gifted presenter, right? An orator is a refined, elegant, powerful presenter and speaker. And I'll break it down simply. That program is broken in chunks. So, for example, as a presenter, how do you engage people? You engage through your voice influences. Are
Mm-hmm.
you using pace and tone and variety and vocabulary and
Yep.
silence and description and these powerful things? So, the way we use our voice engages people. Body language is another. Are we using our space? There's a time to be what I call a podium hugger, but there's time to perhaps pace and walk and move close to the people, or if you're on a big stage. For me personally, I'm a mover and a shaker. I want to move around the stage and not be planted always in one spot, because then I'm not with the people on the sides. There's a time to be static, and at events like that, perhaps being on the podium is a safe space. But even then, our body language, we can be projected, we can be up. All these things can help. We have our content design. This is where our content design, even before we present it, is powerful. There's a line I always think of from Mark Twain. If I had more time, I'd write a shorter letter, because the power is in the edit. Sometimes we're just downloading and it's too much, right? We can actually say more in less. So there's factors around the way we design. How are we making a personal stand for the things that we're explaining? Are we putting passion and our values into the presentation to give it that energy that people are drawn into? Because they're buying you as much as they're buying the message being shared. Audience engagement is a key one, because we've got different types of people in our audience. Some like to be involved, and some don't. Some like to sit back and listen, but you can think of ways to subtly get people involved. Informal polling by a show of hands, standing up if you agree with the point. You know, there's ways to get them moving and involved even subtly. And then there's softer skills such as storytelling. Again, brings into this the power of the presenter and the power of the presentation skills to bring that message with activity or story to bring it to life. So there's several things there, but all of them for me come under this banner of whoever's presenting the message, have they upskilled themselves to some degree as best as they can to be a better messenger, to make sure the power of that message is brought to life.
I think that's very, important point which you just highlighted, that raising hands. Some people complain that, okay, there are 500 people. How can we have an inclusive activity? So even saying like, do you agree with me? Raise your hand. Uh, what do you call, this is good enough from the uh, from that perspective, audience perspective. I think that is even good engagement, I would say that. So
Yes.
this and we need to, and the people who join the session, I would request, like, while you plan your activity, always make sure that it has many activities in the
Yes.
form of, like, as Mark said, like, if there's a stage, if you're presenting, please walk closer to the audience, walk away from the audience, bring a lot of variety, because see, when you're talking to the audience with a distance, they will feel comfortable. Once you walk towards them, they will suddenly get attentive, like with the question, like maybe the presenter asks some question, and then the variation of the pitch and the variation of the multimedia, like a lot of time, it's bringing me to the next point where we're talking about the multitasking. What we do in the presentation, I talk to many multinational organizations. So once they see the slide, interestingly, all of the multinational companies, they use similar kind of slides. Like, no part of the slide should stay empty. Okay, there's nothing here. Put some image there. So a lot of data on the slides. So what happened? They feel like multitasking is there. Like, when I'm talking and when there is a presentation. So I'm speaking and there's a lot of content on the slide. So what people are trying to do, people are trying to read that and people are trying to listen. So reading and listening simultaneously, multitasking is not possible. So, as a scientific proof, this concept is called brain switching.
Yes.
Brain switching. So, you continuously, if there's a lot of data on the slide, so what happens? And suddenly you move to the other part. You So speaker is saying something, you focus on speaker. He's referring the slide, you start reading the slide, and this switching make your mind tired, and then you just sleep. That is
Mhm.
what happened. So, but Nancy Duarte, like, is one of the favorite author in presentation skills. She says that the visual aid slide is a visual aid.
Completely.
People are not is a main driver. The driver is you. That's your support. So it should have a one message per slide, only one message per slide, and it should be viewable within 3 seconds. Within 3 seconds, so that the audience come back to the presenter. So it's not multitasking, it's basically brain switching, which actually make people tired. And Mark, you see that the most famous your the background presentation, I request you to just elaborate the idea behind it, because the way
Yeah.
you structured, that's, I think, that is the best ever thing I see.
Yes. Okay. So your camera is cutting slightly, Ali, I'm sure. But so let me jump in and share. You're absolutely right. I would say visual aid is super important, right? And to your point of multitasking, the brain can bundle tasks. So, for example, you can read a book and listen to music at the same time. You might have music in the background listening to it and you're reading your book, and you can do that. Why? Because the brain bundles it as a task, no different than a computer. But what you can't do is you can't pick up and have two books and read 2 books at the same time, because that's what you're describing, which is the brain toggling. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is, I couldn't agree more. Visual, your slides for me is visual storytelling, or single word lines or bullet point prompts to bring the story to life. But when I train, so that program, that word I used, orator, that's my name of my presentation skills program. And curiously enough, when I train people with that program in presentation skills, we do not use technology. I don't deliver it with technology as a live. Why? Because that's the easy bit. When you understand how to use technology, you add that on top. And too many people forget that the presentation, I am the presentation. I bring the presentation to life. The presentation is merely a supporting visual aid, to your point, or a supporting tool with simple graphs and simplified numbers. But at the end of the day, I'm the presentation. I bring it to life. And so those visual imageries that you use is super important. Now, I heard you just before your camera went funny. I heard you asking about my new style of presentation. So I'll explain them. I call them son et lumière, because that's French for sound and light, like a sound and light show. And what we do is, I know my stories, I know my content. So we've built those presentations, their signature style keynotes. They're 1 hour, but they're already built. It's 6 months in audio visual production, where the visual story's been built. There's an audio soundtrack that's subtle, that sits background, and I'm presenting live. And so the best description I've had somebody tell me about it, that they thought when they've seen it, is they feel like it's watching a live Netflix documentary or something like this, because they're getting this beautiful visual storytelling, like documentary background on the screens behind me, but I'm still delivering the presentation live. No prompts, no scripts, just knowing your stuff, and I'm super prepared. But that's why it's super engaging, because they are visually, it brings that visual storytelling to a whole nother level. And it's also building in that ambience music and soundtrack, which triggers emotions. That's why building is triggering an emotional response. So they are deliberately designed in color, in music, and sound, and the types of imagery that I use to make sure that people are drawn in to the story and the power of the message of those stories.
Yep, and I agree, because I have witnessed that. That's like there's a whole package. I mean, sometimes later, I think during our upcoming summits, people would witness that. We're like audio, visual, and supporting visuals, because that's lovely. I think I would acknowledge the effort you guys have made, and with a vision, with an idea. Like once you're talking something, and as you said, like people are actually bringing visuals in their mind. So you're speaking about pigeon, so the pigeon is in the background. Yeah, pigeons are
Exactly.
flying. You're talking about water, and then there's a river and the waterfall in the background. I think that is something, text, verbal, and the imagery, that's the combined package of that. And I think that is the way your content definitely would be more memorable, more engaging with the audience. So the outcome. Yeah,
Can I jump in here as well? Because I think Hollywood as well, or think Bollywood,
yeah,
Hollywood, think any of these movie mechanisms. For decades now, they have used audio soundtracks. Your favorite movies, even in scenes where there's no dialogue or minimum dialogue, there is audio. There's a soundtrack,
there's a,
and it's even if it's creaking or sound effects or something, there's this subtle ambience of sound in addition
yeah.
to the story. And that's what we've thought about with the way I've built these keynotes, is
Ah,
that's why the sound is there. Why? Because that's part of that emotive storytelling. That's
yeah.
part of drilling into the emotion to draw people in. And so that's why, again, back to your point, though, I mean, in its simplest form, the visuals that you choose to use to represent the stories that you're going to share can absolutely play a key part in drawing people into that message. And then if you take that to the way I have, to the 10th degree, is the quality of those, the pace of those, the soundtrack to those, and where it's not even clicking. It's like people watch and they're wondering where my script is. People have asked, have you got a headphone or something where you're being told? I'm like, no, I know. I'm just looking. I've got one eye. I can see the screen. I can see the visual clues. But again, I've done my preparation. You've got to
Yep.
know your stuff. You are the messenger. You bring it to life, your passion, your energy. Those visual aids help bring it fully into fruition.
I mean, I would love. I think the people who are just experiencing it, I tell you what, you never seen such kind of thing in your life as of now. And again, this is the idea which is unique to the world. So I'm sure once the people will join in the next upcoming summits, they will definitely experience that. Now, moving to another interesting point. See, nowadays cricket is in full swing. So, Mark, do you like cricket, by the way?
You know what? It's a funny one, Ali. I'm not really a watcher of sport, right? This is good for you to know. I've always been. I used to play soccer, like football, when I was young, and a bit of basketball. But I've always been somebody. I like playing sports, and I'll play anything. But I'm not a fan of watching. I don't want to sit on the sidelines in the terrace. I don't want to go to games, and it's rare for me to watch sports on television. I'll watch big events. I'll watch Olympics, and I love seeing people in the top of their craft. I don't really watch a sport, so I don't watch cricket often. No, but my uncle does. My uncle is one of the biggest cricket fans on the planet for sure.
Oh yeah, because you know that in Pakistan everybody loves cricket, and nowadays going on with full swing the World Cup, and after many years we defeated India, and the country is overwhelmed.
Hey Ali, you've cut out from me, my friend. So you cut out,
Yeah,
my friend. I didn't really
yeah.
hear anything that you positioned there.
Right. So what happened? What happened? I think there's some internet issue at my end. I don't know why. Anyways, so whenever there's a World Cup, so imagine the Pakistan population, like 200 million plus population. When there's a World Cup, there are four teams which goes to semi-finals and then the finals. Now, what happens suddenly after few matches? Everybody start just designing their own semi-finalist. Okay, I feel these four teams will be in semi-finals.
Mm-hmm.
I think these two teams will be in the final. But
Mm-hmm.
so everybody does that. The
Mm-hmm.
question is always to them: is anybody saying them to do that? No. Is there some reward they will get out of it? No. But to see the fever, everybody doing it. So what is the message behind it? And let's connect it with the organizational strategy embedding. So what happened? Our mind has a craving of anticipation, creativity. So when the kid's born, so you see that you tell them, okay, don't play with the fire, they will play with the fire. So whatever you will ask them not to do, they will ensure do it because their creativity is at the max level. So as we grow in our age, our creativity doesn't reduce, but our fear level increase. So so our maturity, we call it maturity. So actually we start, reducing our level of risk taking. But creativity compartment stay as it is. Even after the age of 50 or 55, our brain physically starts shrinking. Physically. So certain parts of the cells start dying and then they're not recreating. So the physical size of the brain is reducing. But what happened? The creativity compartment, it always live at 100%. Even when person dies, his cells still keep creating 3 days after his death in the compartment of the creativity. So anticipation, creativity is something very important to us.
Yeah.
So organizations, what they do once they plan the strategy implementation, they do not play with that. Like for example, if company is bringing everybody to Malaysia, for example, they say, like, all right, guys, let's do a strategy session there. So rather than they play with the anticipation, what do you predict that our growth we're planning for next year? Rather than creating these kind of gaps, they will say, all right, so are you ready to enjoy to visit KLCC? Are you ready to enjoy the Genting and the other islands? So these are so once they come back, so they only remember those things. Why? Because you created anticipation, but you created it wrongly. Because your finance director never approved the budget for entertainment. He never approved it for the entertainment. It was more about alignment. It more about setting the scene for next year. But you were not able to pick that point properly. So the point with the cricket, bring it to the organization. whenever we bring to our sessions, have an anticipation campaign related to your content.
Okay, so let me jump in. There's a couple of things. So yes, I want to add a slightly different slant to it as well, right?
Okay.
With people, human beings are by design meaning-making machines. We give meaning to everything, which is what you're kind of alluding to when you say anticipation. The minute we start seeing a slide come up or we start the opening, our brain's filling in, where's this story going? Why? Because we're giving it meaning. We're meaning-making machines. We even hear people talking about this when we meet people. We might say, oh, a flag, I've got a red flag to do with that situation. Well, what's that red flag based on? Past experiences that we then start allocating to future things that haven't even happened. Why? Because we are meaning-making machines. That anticipation is us applying meaning either optimistically or pessimistically, but we're giving meaning to things. Now, that's important to your point. So yes, you can use the way you're doing presentations is try and help tap in to build anticipation. But you've also got to think that you are not in control of those people's minds. Nobody has enough words or wisdom to tell somebody what they should think or anticipate because they're going to decide for themselves. So that's why, again, it's even really critically important in part of your design that you find the right stories, the right metaphors, to help make sure that people don't start anticipating negatively if you don't want them to, or over optimistically if you want to manage expectations. Because you can't control the meaning they're going to give stuff. The only way you can influence it is how have you packaged the story to allow for the meaning people may give. Does that make sense, Ali? That's the first thing. Does that make sense before I move on to a second?
Yeah, so I agree with you, and that is like connecting with the another another scientific fact that we forget 90% of the information, so we only remember 10%. So everybody is giving different meaning. They remember differently based on the history. So I'll build on that once you will conclude your point. That's the
Well,
next point.
I was going to share what you said about the brain. I think you can see this. I'll try. On my phone, I've got an app called Brain
Yep, I
HQ.
can. Yep, we
Brain
can see that.
Brain HQ. Now, I love brain. Obviously, I'm people in behavior. I love neuroscience. I'm a geek that way. A lot of it's in my books and works. Brain HQ is a daily app, and it's designed because it's been proven by so many people, specialists in the field. The brain is also neuroplasticity is at play. And the things that you're describing in terms of brain going backwards and spiraling, we can actually keep stretching and improving it, even in older age and later years, and through simple games and things like this. So that particular app, Brain HQ, is one I've got because the games on it, they're not games in a sense. I don't have games like on my phone, but these are brain-specific design games to increase neuroplasticity, to increase memory, to increase retention, to increase creativity, to increase speed, to increase these typical brain functions that we want to. And you can actually stretch those and keep them really sharply tuned way beyond what people may think. So there is an opportunity to do that for sure. But that's, again, that's out of our hands if people do it or not. What we can do when we're driving strategy is be more mindful of how we design our content to tap into getting them to be creative. Ask them to use their imagination, but lead that imagination into areas that you want them to. Sometimes you want them to do blue brain thinking, like detailed thinking or blue sky thinking. I'll share one quick activity I do here, for example. We have rigid fixed mindset. So often I might get 2 teaspoons or a saucepan. And what I'll do is I'll give my audience, the participants of this session I'm running for this, a minute or 2 minutes, and they can do it individually. Your job is, that saucepan is for cooking food in, but what else can you use it for? For example, a cricket bat. You could cricket bat balls with that saucepan, or you could wear it as a hat, or you could catch balls or something with it, or you could put a pot plant in it. You see what I mean? Like, you're coming up with multiple creative ideas for what you functionally know as a saucepan. that's an activity designed to get people thinking creatively and with this idea of anticipation. So it's just, again, it comes back to the power of how you're skilled in how you design content to get them anticipating, get them excited, or lead that anticipation, or make sure that you package a message so they're not giving things negative meaning that you don't want it to either.
So anticipation. So now I'll build another point from that. Why anticipation is important? Because see, remember, we get inspirational material everywhere, like TED videos. We get a lot of inspiration the way they communicate. But what happened after a couple of days? We forget most of the information. So then, when we see the fact, our brain has a curve, forgetting curve. So 90% of the information is forgotten within 48 hours. Within 48 hours. So a lot of time, Mark, it happened like after a couple of days time, we say, oh, I read something very nice. I heard something very nice, but I can't recall. So in fact, memory is the money. If so, we call it like start from inspiration, it goes to memorable, and if it's a memorable, only then it is actionable. And that's the base our company name is designed, AIM, inspiration in the center, memorable and actionable. So that's the way it is designed. So why anticipation is important? Because if we forget 90% of the information, we have only control on 10%. But the bigger problem is basically, as per our previous experiences, like based on our life, based on our events, you will remember different 10%. I will remember different 10%. So if there are 100 people sitting in a hall, different people will have a random memory, which
Mm-hmm.
might not be important to the company. Now, the point here is I want people to focus on their 10%. The company has a strategy, and they have the first of all, they need to think what is our 10%. All right, okay, so these are the 10% content which is most important for us. If people remember, they need to remember this one only. Most of the people should remember this one. So once they create anticipation campaign, that should be based on that 10% content, because then they should take three steps. One is anticipation. So the before the event, they build the anticipation. So one question is being asked to everybody. So then the gaps are related to that. Now once they will fill that gap within the event, within the session, so now that problem is solved. The third step is basically repetition. Later on, you actually repeat those anticipation filled up gaps again. So by this way, the retention will still be 10%, but that 10% will be what you actually want. And I tell you what, you can control it actually. You can control. If you follow these three steps, we have done experiments with a lot of people in Pakistan. We run these campaigns, anticipation and the delivery and the repetition, and then we did the survey. After a 1 month's time, most of the people remember what we wanted them to remember. So that's another point, the importance of anticipation.
And well, as you're talking, though, I'll add to that anticipation. There's a theme there you're describing, and I'm going to really hit this one quite hard, and that is repetition. So some of the best speeches in the world are remembered, but there's repetitive lines because it's out of learning. Repeat. You know, there's an old adage. When I used to work taking tours around Europe, you would constantly be telling people what was going on. And first thing in the morning, you tell them the whole day's agenda. As you get to the first stop, you repeat the rest of the day's agenda. As you get to
Yep.
lunch, you repeat the remaining day's agenda. You're constantly repeating, repetition. So you are repeating the core messages over and over in slightly different ways because
Yeah.
people hear things slightly differently as well. But that's why repetition as part of that anticipation is really kind of key. Now, think about when I talk about, that retention of information. I like thinking and using the metaphor of ping pong balls, table tennis, ping pong balls.
Mhm.
I often say, if I imagine as an audience, okay, get ready. I'm going to throw 10 ping pong balls at you, and you got to get ready to catch them all. So get ready
Mhm.
now, and they're ready. Now I'm going to throw all 10, but they're not going to catch all 10. Even if they're fully attentive, they might catch one or two.
Yeah.
That means they can put them in the pocket. Now I've only got 8 to throw next time. And I'm going to get ready. I'm going to throw the next 8 again. Get ready to catch. They catch another 1 or 2. They put it in their pocket. And so adoption, this is why it happens over time. People
Yep.
will take different bits of content at different pace as you deliver it. That's why repetition, 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 repetition on the day, repetition over weeks, repetition over months, because adoption of strategy does not happen all components with every individual 100% all on instance number 1. This is why repetition of creative communications, repetition of different ways to communicate and different messengers of that communication and that message, because people will hear it differently until it sinks in. You might ask 3 people the same thing. 3 people will give you the same advice, said slightly differently with different energy, and you might not really get it from 2, but the 3rd person, it really resonates because that messenger really works for you. What is that? Repetition again. Does that make sense? So repetition, repetition, repetition. There's a second thing in there as well, and that there's a website I love, and I'll give you the URL. It's creative, and I'm giving you some of my trade secrets today for those who've tuned in, right? There's a website called angryalien.com. Angryalien.com. Now, what that website is, it was years ago. I've been using this website for easily 20 years or more. The lady that came up with that idea, she decided to start making short 30-second videos that are animated using white bunny rabbits. And they are 30-second movie reenactments. So for example, if you've seen the movie Titanic by James Cameron, something like this, that movie is I think it's about 2.5 hours or 3 hours long. She's got a version that's 30 seconds with animated white bunny rabbits. But if you've seen the movie Titanic and you watch that 30-second white bunny rabbit version, you recognize the movie Titanic in those 30 seconds. Why? Because she's drawing on those few lines, scenes that are memorable, those 10% points that are memorable. You know, it's the same in movies. So this is why, again, the power again talks of the power of your content design, the way you've designed presentations to bring that strategy to life. Have you put thought in to the language, the wording, the activities, the metaphors, the visuals, the stories that you are going to use to increase the likelihood of those core themes really sticking in people's minds? It's again that power of design. So Angry Alien, this is the best example I can think of small sound bites that people remember years later. You know, I've got, and from my presentation skills program, I can tell you I've got a line I often open with or I close with. And this line is, it's my room. Meaning, as a presenter, you've got to remember it's my space. I have to be creative. I've got to bring the energy if I want people to get it. And years after I deliver this training program, that one line is often, because the way I deliver it, people always remember that line. It's my room. I've got this. You know, it's my room. It's my room. To remind themselves to tune on and tap in to all these gifts and skills that they knew were underneath that. Their voice, their body, the edit, the engagement. It's my room is that one line that reinforces the other learnings are there. They're there. It just brings it back to life.
Very true, very true. And I think this is one of the points where like a lot of companies need to need to focus, because repeat is something like once the event is done, like even in the town halls, they never repeat the similar information. So it is important the colors, the font, the theme, the same thing need to be remembered, need to be repeated over a couple of times over there. And then we need to use the specific cues as well. I'll give you an example. If you run a presentation skills training workshop for the people, what happened? At what time you want people to remember those, recall those rules exactly when they're actually preparing the presentation? Normally, what happened? There is a training, there's a workshop. Nowadays, it's virtual. Let's go physical. The physical time, once there's a giveaways, people say, okay, diaries, people give t-shirts, mugs, everything to recall the training. But actually, that's the wrong approach. Those assets, those elements do remind them about the training, but not about the content. Not about the content. Content is something that should be recalled when somebody's about to write a presentation, like for example, like a banner in a PowerPoint or something on a laptop, so that whenever they are preparing them, they recall that. So recall is another challenge which where we do not focus a lot. So I think for a lot of people the output is in fact creating an anticipation campaign and then fill it and then repeat it, so that you need to know that 90% information is forgotten, so let's focus on 10%. The 10% will be there, but at least focus that this same 10% is being remembered by everybody.
And
So
Ali, and that is all that recall. That's why it's something that we started with earlier. By making sure that you've asked people what they want to get out of the day, what's important for them, what's their pain, what do they want to achieve.
yeah,
Another point is for me, always at the end of a session, particularly when I'm doing training sessions with teams, is asking people, how are you going to put this into action? How will this be applicable to what your outcome was? What's that actionable item you're going to take? Because that commitment to an action is their way to then make sure they recall the information because they're putting into play. So you also close off by not expecting or assuming that they're going to automatically do it. Ask, how will you do this? How is this relevant? What are you going to do with this? And that is their recall. That is them putting it into action.
very right. And I like, so we got 2 points now before we conclude because we got 9 minutes now. So the one is quickly I'll touch on attention span. A lot of places like we got keynotes, Mark, that goes like 25 minutes keynote, 30 minutes keynote, and back to back keynotes. uh, we need to understand what is our real attention span. As the latest research, a lot of people say that attention spans are reduced. In fact, research says that attention spans are increased now. But what happened because of that? Our method to use the mobile. So what happened? We like on the YouTube, we just keep scrolling down, and whatever we like, we check that. On the Facebook, LinkedIn, we keep scrolling down. So we have actually become selective now.
Oh,
We watch what we want to watch. We watch for more time. Like Netflix is like famous. We watch more videos, more movies we used to watch earlier. Going to cinema, we used to watch less movies. Now we watch more because in Netflix we have the videos, we have the documentaries, we have the movies available which we like actually. So attention span is changed. So we need to focus on, like, it is 10 minutes. Biology says there's a 10 minutes attention span, but actually lot lesser now because of this a COVID thing. Everybody was working from home, so there was like somebody using the mobile. We need to make sure that we use a lot of multimedia. We need to use the multimedia
yeah.
somewhere. So when we talk multimedia, it doesn't mean videos only. It is like maybe question, maybe question,
Mm-hmm.
maybe some asking somebody to share a story, some
Mm-hmm.
reflection.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a change of medium.
Yeah.
Every time people are not able to predict you. You say
Yeah.
like, all right, so if you come on the stage, the worst thing you're gonna do. All right, so next 30 minutes, guys, I'm gonna talk about this. The next 30 seconds, everybody gonna sleep because they know like next 30 minutes there's one way communication. We need to bring a lot of variety, videos, images, visuals, questions, stories. Mark, what is your quick take on
Yeah,
that?
there's a couple of points there. So actually, to your point, I often joke, I've got media right about this. I say we're in a Blinkist society.
Yeah.
There's an app called Blinkist that you can get, and
uh,
the app is abbreviated books to 15 minutes. Now, as an author, I get there's a spite for that, but the problem is that you can't Blinkist everything in life. I'm an author. My book took 16 years in research, and you can't just turn it into a 15-minute read. Tell a musician that 5-minute hit song you want to try and Blinkist to 3 lines only, last 30 seconds. They'll hit you with the guitar, you know. And movies, we wouldn't go to a cinema to watch a movie that's only 1.5 minutes long. We actually go to watch the 2-hour movie.
yeah.
Right, but to your point, it's the movie has got change of pace.
Mm,
There's change of tension, and
mm,
that's what you're describing there is change of medium, change
mm,
of content, change of activity, and that's why when you're doing a full-on event with different presentations, it's important to think about the flow and the structure of what those presentations are. And again, how skilled the people are presenting it, because this is why you end up with, a point you referenced earlier. If you've got back-to-back 30-minute presentations of graph-driven slides from people that aren't particularly polished or energetic, people are going to zone out. You want to change the medium, mix it up, and you can get people's attention longer. You've experienced, like, those keynotes that I do my style, they're an hour, they go in 15 minutes. People will stay present. Why? Because the pace and tension of the design, again, is important, the medium that's used. So this, again, really just talks to your point about, I agree wholeheartedly. Think about how can you, even in a singular presentation, how can you change the tone, the pace and tone and tension? In an entire day's seminar, how can you structure all the different pieces so they're stitched together with mixed mediums and breaks and change in pace and tension? So it keeps them guessing. Keep them guessing. Keep people guessing so they stay attentive.
Yep, very, very right. So I think with that we covered like several topics. Once you're planning your event, the next event, you can actually bring part of it. We still left with few of the interesting points. So considering the time considered, because we left with 3 to 4 minutes now, I think we'll be just concluding with an idea. Like for example, let's just give a real life example to the people. Like if they're planning their next town hall, like if they're planning for like next 2 hours town hall, what can be the ideal architecture, that flow, and the design of the that 2 hours event in the company? Any thought from your side before I give my input on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say there, well, what's the purpose of that town hall? What the single question I'd say, and then I'll hand back to you, is if you're delivering any message, you're having a town hall, what's the purpose? Because it's not just to get together. What is the purpose of that? And what do you want? What is the intended desire that you want people to go away thinking and feeling and doing with the time they spend? And I always remind myself, I always say this as a presenter, I remind myself that time is everybody's most valuable commodity. And I have to treat that respectfully and make sure that there is always something of value for them trading their time to come to that meeting. Now, a town hall is the same. If I'm going to stand and spend a 30-minute, an hour, or 2 at a town hall, I better be getting stuff out of that that's valuable for me to put in effect. So you got to think in the design of that town hall, what is the purpose? What do you want them to feel, think, and do with the information? And then structure the presentations and the design of that event accordingly with the best people, with the best media to get those messages across.
Very well thoughts. And definitely in addition to that, a lot of senior leaders believe that they're very good in public speaking. We need to tell them, guys, you need to understand. Like a lot of people, I talk to them and say, like, I can stand up and I can talk. I said, that's your problem. That is something you actually, you're happy with that. Talk about the audience. How are you communicating? You need to think from that perspective. The people believe that if I'm able to speak with confidence, that's a public speaking. That's not. That's not. That's just the start of it. You need to see, okay, how I need to be retro. A lot of I talk to the senior leaders. I say, if you want to accept one request from me, become storytellers.
Exactly.
Become storytellers.
100%.
Yeah. So, and I begged them, I said, please, you come to the stage. How many times you come on stage to talk to your employees? You come and you talk about numbers? No, not right. Numbers they will remember. Stories is something which will go a long way.
That's one of
So,
my. So that's sorry, I didn't want to jump in, but it really prompts Ali. When I finished my presentation skills training, I got these 7 wrapped up tips, and one of them is master stories, because stories appeal to all the senses. If you become
yeah.
a great storyteller, you appeal to both heart and head. I could not agree more.
And even the mind part, let me tell you the scientific thing. The facts activate two parts of the brain. The facts activate two parts. Story activate entire brain. So
Yeah.
see, so that's the way it is. So with that, I think I think really enjoying the conversation, Mark, with you, and I'm sure it's very positive. And it's the first time I tell you honestly, because nobody talks on event how to design the event. how to bring inclusivity, understanding the attention span. So these kind of things. So I think hopefully to the internal communication managers who are joining the sessions, HR leaders, we wish you best of luck. I think it was very valuable for you guys. And Mark, thank you for like you joined like 9 p.m. your time. Really acknowledge for your support. It's a very value for the people. Thanks for your contribution, and we'll continue to collaborate more. And whoever hasn't joined, we'll share the video with them.
Can I just say there's a learning in everything, and you can see we timed it for 1 hour, and we've done 1
Yep.
hour, so we are finishing on time, which is also an important takeaway for any presentation, to wrap on time. Ali, it's
Yeah.
great to join you. I'll speak to you soon, I'm sure.
All right. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Enjoy the video, and do share the video with others if you like it. Bye bye.